ridiculous to me. And some of the people who I was supposedly against looked great. But, we were young, and that's how it is. It's tribal. You pick your sides because you want to make your bones in the world. And, the East Village was just, it was the right place, the right time. It was just exploding. It had 100 and something galleries. It was insane. It was sanity. And since then we've laughed about it. We back then we used to laugh about, every cheesy restaurant or cheesy bar had Z-grade paintings in it. But now if you look back, you say, well, that's the whole point. Even Z-grade bars had crappy art. It was everywhere. Everybody's employed. Everybody was getting to show. There was just a lot of activity, and there's a whole kind of scene. It was a small little area too, so you'd bump into everybody. You'd see, you'd go over to this gallery and you'd end up at the Pyramid, and McDermott and McGuff was dressed in their 19th century clothes, singing on a table. Fun Gallery had its scene. John Sex and everybody else were doing their thing at the Pyramid. Klaus Nomi. It was all kind of right there, and all kind of, we were right in the middle of it all. So,
was that the years that the TV Party was happening with Glenn?
Oh yeah. A lot of stuff was going on.
That's funny.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. And but yeah, so but because of being such an inside player, then I got in that whole scene that in the East Village where I showed with International, and and that put you in the middle of people like, also my teachers have been Barbara Kruger, Sherry Levine, John Baldessari, so it's not not an outsider. So I end up with Sherry Levine at International with Monument. I end up with John Baldessari at Sonnabend, and
right.
Then that whole scene in East Village kind of exploded. It happened actually while I was still in the Whitney. I was already hanging out with that sort of crew, Hallie, Coons, what would become sort of people who have been associated with generationally. That was already happening, and the Whitney seemed kind of to be slowing me down, so I kind of lost interest in it. Plus, it was also political. It was also PC. It is the epicenter, the mother lode of PC manufacturing, outrage and indignation.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many years were you doing this then?
Yeah. When did that? Of course, the 80s ended with the 90s rolled around. But
look, I got there in 82, and I had my first shows in 85, 84.
Mm-hmm.
It happened really fast. And then the big show that put us all on the map was 86. So basically that's 4 years.
Yeah.
That was the one at Sonnabend with Coons and Hallie. That sort of kind of labeled our generation. That was 4 years after I got to New York. So, yeah. So, look, I left because of that. Eventually it just, okay, let's cut to the chase here. It was great for a while, but the 80s, which had just been careening along sort of, a big hissing machine, suddenly hit the Gulf War, and it all just came careening to a halt. And like I said, I remember the first smart bomb being shot down, grain silos or whatever the hell, chimneys. I just looked at the TV and said to one of my assistants, I said, "It's over. That run is over." I just knew it. It was over, and the art world is a funny place. It's not nice. Mm-hmm. They can. It's very heat-seeking. I'm sure you guys know all of this. They can be icy cold, or they can just be bending over backwards to placate you and rub you with little cotton balls. I remember one time at a certain point, I just sort of passed my sort of hot moment, and I was standing there with two friends of mine, my ex-boss, Pat Steer, who hadn't yet started her water. So she was, she hadn't yet started them. So she wasn't on that role yet. She was an older artist. And Matthew Barney, who had just had his first show at Gladstone. We were sitting there.
I remember seeing that first show at Gladstone.
Yeah, 91.
Right.
And I just remember like we just standing there talking like casually, and we're just artists and we're friends. We don't think anything of it. But I just remember the way people around us were responding to us, the degree of heat. And I was particularly sensitive to it because I'd just been right in the center of it all. And then suddenly, like the Krieg lights had shifted to Matthew, and Pat hadn't had her moment there, so she was just some old bat. And so they were kind of indifferent to Pat, contemptuous to me because I was kind of suddenly out, and then just fawning over Matthew. And I just went like, I've been on each side of this equation in this town. I mean, I'm not sure I want to stick around. I know Warhol said, everything comes back in a cycle, but that's when I kind of decided, that and a very bad divorce and penury, a few other things. I just said, I don't want to stick around like one of those ghosts that go to openings, and just sort of like, in there. I just rather, so my plan was just to get the fuck out and take 2 suitcases with me, one for art supplies and one for my clothes, and just get the hell out and go live in hotels for a year, make drawings and see how that went. Then at that time, I also got offered a full-time teaching position at Harvard.
Right.
And I was very kind of like, what the hell? Back and forth. Like, and my parents were both academics, were like, duh, Harvard, of course. And I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, that's a whole other life.
Yeah.
And the political correct thing had just sort of started there, and I said, without painting myself as any sort of here, I just thought it might be kind of like spending your whole time watching what you're saying. I'm not sure the academic world is, I'm for and then the grading papers, and then Old Northeast. I just said like, I was born in the tropics, I grew up in the tropics, and I'm from the islands. And the 12 years I spent in New York City, it was, it was like holding my breath. And when I just said, I could get out, I just said, screw it, I'm out, and I'll cast my dice and see where things land and just take a chance. So I just took a chance, and I went to Brazil. Just packed up everything, surfboard in Bahia, in the little town of Trancoso.
Yeah, I think you probably dodged a bullet by not taking that Harvard position. It sounds really prestigious, but I can't see that working for you.
A friend of mine took it, Annette Lemieux. She didn't take the job I was offered. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what happened to my job. I just never, followed through. But my friend Annette Lemieux, she was sort of related to our old generation. She's there, and she's been there ever since.
Right. So you were able to like, hit the ground running when you got to Bali, right? And you were able to surf and make your work?
Well, that came way later, I think. Let's see. Well, I got to Brazil, and I took my stuff. I decided to paint. Yeah, I was. There were so many factors coming. I was also fed up with fabricators. I was absolutely fed up to the eyeballs with fabricators. I was tired of driving out to places like Red Hook and really stinky parts of town, and meeting pokey, ornery, stubborn assholes who fabricated my work. And not all of them, a couple of sweethearts, but often, and then just being held hostage with deadlines and sweating it out and being removed from the work. And that's when I decided, I'm done with fabrication. I'm done with all this slick crap. I'm going to go hand make my own stuff from beginning to end. I'm going to paint and, nurse it through and just go see what happens. And that's when I decided to change my work. So bought a whole bunch of art supplies, packed up, went down to Brazil. I think we were driving out to my friend and I, a Brazilian artist by the name of Carlon. He was actually came up with Ernesto Neto, but Ernesto, they were like kind of like young, too young, hungry young bucks on the make, and but Ernesto Neto was obviously the one who made it big. But anyway, I was with his wingman, and we took a little place out in Bahia. And when we were driving out there, it was the craziest thing. We had our car packed up to nines, surfboard on top, all these bits of plywood that I was going to paint on, our art supplies for both of us, just packed up so that only enough room for the two of us in the car. And the entire way down to Trancoso, there was these beautiful, like, women of every different racial makeup you could imagine, all hitchhiking with their thumbs out, like going like, we're like, what the fuck kind of place is this? This is madness. But we couldn't do a thing. It was just crazy. And then finally we had to take a ferry and drive through more jungle and sand roads through the jungle and wade over creeks. And then we're driving along and suddenly jungle on each side. And suddenly out of the jungle, this motorcycle, big trail bike with a girl, a brown girl in a thong with tattoos, whips out the jungle, looks over her shoulder at us, then lifts her butt in the air, and then roars off in a cloud of dust. Well, like. So I said to Carlon, I'm going to marry that. And I did. And I live to regret it. As life goes. But anyway, I stayed in Trancoso. I did my first painting. So it was crazy fun. Well, we drank lots of cachaça. We did a few other things. I mean, town was the craziest little town. A lot of very famous Brazilian musicians like Gal Costa and Caetano Veloso have houses there and spend time there. And otherwise, it's kind of a sleepy place. But it's mad at night. It just goes crazy. It's run by this guy called the Colonel. And he rides around with his gun in his waistband and on his horse, tips his hat to ladies, orders cachaça, tips his hat again. And then they regularly pistol whip people. And
I'm so interested in how your work changed and then ended up in this like painterly world that seems like Mad Max-esque and voyeuristic and kind of perverse and decadent. And I wonder, I'm like, is this real or is this fantasy?
That's 2008. That's way back. I'm like on another.
Oh, I know what you're doing now. Yeah.
You do?
I did. Yeah. I saw some beautiful studio shots of you working on some of the clay heads and then painting them.
No. That's way back. That's like 2013. Yeah. No, I haven't done that for you. 2015 maybe. Yeah. No, I'm kind of back to older work now.
Yeah.
Come full
circle.
Let's see. Well, shall I run through quickly the trajectory of Bali?
I'm interested in that because, one thing I was discussing with Chris was like how your work is so diverse and it's like chapters. And as you've migrated and moved, the work has changed. But there's this vein that runs through it all that connects it. So I'd love to hear about that.
I'm glad you noticed that. That's been a problem. I mean, some people don't make the connections or they don't follow through. And, the art world has gotten so big and so diverse and so, multinational that, if an artist changes identity, does any shape-shifting, the radar loses track of them.
Right.
So, that's the way but yeah, I mean, that's definitely been at play there. When I first went to Brazil, when I did that first show that I produced, I started in Brazil, and the first work I did in Bali, the figurative work that was kind of like, people thought like I'd run off and found the island of Dr. Moreau and come up with this really wild ass shit. What they didn't understand was that I had actually conceived the entire body of work in my head in New York City. And I just needed to get the hell away in order to make it because I didn't have time in New York anymore. I mean, I just knew too many people, too many social obligations. The ex-girlfriend of my ex-assistant had an opening that I was obligated to go to. And being an all-night person, we're talking about, different hours. When you work till 9 a.m. sometimes, going to a 6 o'clock opening and filling yourself with cheap white wine, and then being, a compulsive, there goes your work day. And if you're really compulsive, there goes your next work